us here knows that we are facing and need to meet the challenges of the growing senior community in this county. We are probably perilously close to about 200,000 seniors that live in our community today, but that number continues to explode year by year, and we'll probably be around 200. The estimate is very close to 260,000 seniors living in this community over the age of 65 by the year 2020. I think the question each one of these agencies has to answer is, are we ready to meet the challenges of the demands of the seniors that will be living in our community? And we need to begin to address all forms of potential abuse that can be directed against seniors, and that includes neglect, financial crimes, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. One of the challenges for us in the community is the fact that, and if you are familiar with this topic of protecting seniors, you know that only 4% of seniors who are victims of crimes actually self-report. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of challenges that face us in both prosecution, police, and other protective agencies that are trying to protect our seniors. In many instances, the number one reason why seniors do not complain initially about being the victim of a crime is because of embarrassment. We've got to change that perception. Another reason that so often that the cases are not brought to our attention is because of the emotional and economic dependence that potentially that senior has upon the individual who's actually abusing them. And there are mental challenges too. There's senility and other human conditions that sometimes make that person a very likely target for someone who is willing to take advantage of them. Look, we are preparing each of our agencies to educate the public about how we can collectively work better on this project. One of the things, you see signs all around me, one of the things we're doing to educate the public is with the new program on our ride-on buses is to put these messages about neglect, financial fraud, and what are the telltale signs that would make you know if you're in the community and you see a neighbor or a friend being taken advantage of, what are the telltale signs?
My mother never made it to be a senior citizen. She passed away 20 years ago at the age of 58, but her mother survived her daughter, and so I was the caretaker for my grandmother for the last few years of her life. We moved her here to Montgomery County from Los Angeles, California, and she lived for the last 3 years of her life in an assisted living facility in Silver Spring. And I had the wonderful time visiting with her. We would get together a couple of times a week, and what I found was that the other residents in the assisted living facility were not as fortunate as my grandmother. They didn't have visitors very often. They were really quite isolated, and for some of them months would go by before anyone who loved them or cared for them would come to see them. And under these circumstances, which occur all too often in assisted living facilities, nursing homes, and in private residences, these individuals do become targets, unfortunately, for exploitative and abusive crimes. And so these symbolic occasions like this are a very important opportunity to remind the public of our most fundamental responsibility as a government and as a community to look out for those who really depend upon us, who really are vulnerable, and who really need all of us as a community and as a government to look out for their best interests. So this occasion of Elder Abuse Day is a very, very important opportunity to remind ourselves to look out for those who really are in need and really need to be cared for. I'm very happy to be here and to participate in this public awareness event.
It is my pleasure to stand here before you to talk about how important it is for people to report elder abuse to law enforcement and or to the Adult Protective Services hotline. And the first thing I want to say before I do anything else to say, either call 911 or the number for the Adult Protective Services hotline is 240-777-3000. If we don't know, we can't investigate, we can't take care of somebody who's in a very vulnerable situation. Research shows that 1 in 24 case of abuse or neglect is referred to Adult Protective Services. So far, APS investigates 700 cases. That's 16,000 cases in the county that go unreported. We have to spread the word and make sure that everybody who's in a vulnerable situation, in a nursing home, in an assisted living situation, living at home, in a group home, living with family, that if they're vulnerable, we get word so we can do something to help that individual. So I, for one, am very grateful for the partnership we have with law enforcement and with others, with the state. Secretary Kramer is here. I say it everywhere. We're very, very grateful for the support and the partnership we get from everybody, because it's truly a multidisciplinary effort to protect our vulnerable seniors.
My parents were very fortunate to live for the last 45 years of their life in their home in Silver Spring. And I know that when my folks got into their 70s and 80s that I would regularly get phone calls from them about people who were soliciting money, about people that when my dad was out working on the lawn, people would just walk up and offer to do work or offer some business proposition, if you will. And because I had we had these conversations, my folks had a healthy dose of suspicion with all these calls and offers that they would get that seemed to only occur as they got older. And I was happy to give that advice and assistance as to try to be a good son. But I will tell you, as I stand here as the chief of police, I understand that that everyone's safety is my priority. And there are those in our community that are particularly vulnerable to certain types of crimes. And I want to talk about an extra measure of protection that we are offering for those who are vulnerable and elderly. I think when law enforcement talks about domestic violence and we talk about child abuse, everybody gets that. They understand that. But unfortunately, there's far less recognition and publicity and education about crimes against our seniors. And that's why it's particularly important to get the information out about the red flags of abuse. If people don't understand what to look for, if they don't contact police with their concerns, then we can't help. And as you heard Alawalia talk about the fact that only about 4 or 5% of these cases are ever reported, it shows you just how much education we need to do with the community. And I want to emphasize to the public that you don't need to know that there's abuse. If you suspect that there's abuse or suspect that someone might be being victimized, call Adult Protective Services, call the police, let us investigate that. In 2013, the police department formed a special unit. It's the Elder Vulnerable Abuse Unit, and it's within our Special Investigations Division. Since that time, that unit has investigated 276 cases involving elderly or vulnerable adults. This year alone, in 2015, we have already investigated 58 cases within this unit. Many of the circumstances of these cases are absolutely heartbreaking. Just last month, we reported on a case where an 87-year-old woman had been in poor health and was being taken care of by her son. The woman went to the hospital, and she was determined to have had a bed sore that was so bad that her spine was actually showing. We determined that her caretaker had actually been putting newspaper and cornstarch in the open wound. Now, that woman has since passed away. And that case is now being moved to our homicide unit. It's still under investigation and charges have yet to be filed, but this is the kind of heartbreaking case that can happen. Now, fortunately, most of the cases that come to our attention aren't so extreme. Our department is committed to improving the general safety for our seniors. I'm pleased that we have volunteers within the police department that go anywhere and everywhere to give a presentation called Keeping Seniors Safe. It's a great program, and we have information inside about that program. So improving the general safety for seniors and preventing exploitation of vulnerable and seniors is a priority for all of the partners that you see here today, and I'm very pleased to stand with them in this effort.
I'm not very proud to be here in the role of a victim. As a matter of fact, one feels rather foolish for having allowed this to happen and so on. I am here, though, and thrilled to be here among the heroes who helped me in one of the most desperate moments of my life when I thought there was no help. So I am thrilled with that. All of the help from Montgomery County. I had a health caregiver living with me for 5 years. The first 2 years, she was the caregiver for my husband during the last 2 years of his life. When he died, we arranged for her to stay on and take care of me because I had increasing numbers of health concerns. And I just celebrated my 90th birthday. Things mount up. During the time this health care provider was with me, I had 2 fractures, one on my right leg, one on my left leg, and she nursed me through them, wheeled me in my wheelchair, and so on. She was so devoted, she was so kind. It took me totally by surprise when I learned about all these withdrawals from my ATM account. And of course I turned to her before anybody, said, who could have done that? How could they have access, and so on. My son and I went down to the Montgomery County Police Office, and I'm still indebted to Officer Olcott, who was kind and listened with care and helped me every step of the way, and I followed his advice absolutely to the letter of the law. And among the things he had gotten access to were the pictures of my aide from the bank, from the camera, where she had been using my ATM card. Until that moment, I refused to believe that this was the person who had done it. And to this day, I keep thinking of theories, maybe she was coerced, maybe she was blackmailed. I don't know, but it's so out of character. But I certainly felt a sense of despair, a sense of betrayal by somebody I had trusted and I needed so much. I just depended on her so much. So Officer Olcott was my first hero. Later on, I found out she was trying to leave the country. She was picked up at the Canadian border as part of a passport search, and she was brought back to Montgomery County. And I thought, wow, they're doing something right in Montgomery County, and I want to thank you again. Later on, the case was argued by the state's attorney's office. It was the prosecuting attorney was Gabriel Carrera, and I didn't have to do anything. He really presented my case. I was very happy that Judge Reed was able to listen to the case and that a favorable outcome came in my direction. I'm still sad that this happened to me. I feel foolish. I did leave my purse around where this aide could regularly go to my wallet and slip out the ATM card. She was doing it on a regular basis, and I'm just telling people, please be more cautious than that. I was trusting, I was too trusting, and I am so grateful to Montgomery County for the legislation, for the way you have responded in enacting that legislation and making me feel a safer elder in this community. Thank you, heroes, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you.
I told you we saved the best for last, and that was by far the best. That is, thank you very much. We are honored by your presence here, and I think seeing you here today tells us what we're trying to do, and the people that we're trying to protect. We're doing the right thing because we're protecting people just like you, Ms. Baruch.